The living are such crude instruments. They collect things, gold, art, property, clumsy, physical anchors in a fleeting world. They believe they own these objects. They are mistaken. The objects own them. They are vessels, catching the overflow of their clumsy, powerful emotions. Grief, for instance. It has a beautiful, deep, indigo flavor. Rage is a fiery, chaotic crimson. Pure, selfless love is almost too bright to savor. For a century, I have wandered a disembodied palette, tasting these faint, residual echoes. A sad, lonely vintage. But once in a generation, a new instrument is born. A living soul with a palate so refined, so sensitive, that they can unlock the full, vibrant, fresh flavor of an object's history. A psychic sommelier. I have been waiting for such a long time. And tonight, I have finally found one. I have a gift, or a curse, depending on your perspective. I am an appraiser of fine antiques, but my valuation goes beyond provenance or material. When I hold an object, I feel its history. A faint impression, a flicker of joy from a wedding ring, a whisper of pride from a soldier's medal. These are just echoes, the emotional residue of a life lived. For years, I have honed this skill, using it to discern fakes from authentic pieces. The emotional echo of a forgery is always hollow. I prided myself on my detachment. I was a historian of feeling, a librarian of lost emotions, but I never read the books, I just catalogued them. My work was clean, quiet, and controlled. I believed I was the master of these faint whispers from the past. I had no idea that a whisper, to the right entity, can sound like a dinner bell. The collection arrived on a Tuesday, the estate of a reclusive industrialist who had died without an heir. It was a treasure trove of the rare and the beautiful. But the entire collection felt heavy, saturated. I was cataloging the items. For a silent auction, I came across a small, exquisitely crafted music box from the 1890s. Black lacquered wood, inlaid with mother of pearl. It was the centerpiece. The moment my fingers touched the cold lacquer, the usual faint whisper I felt from objects became a roar. It wasn't an echo, it was a scream. A wave of pure, undiluted grief, so powerful it buckled my knees. The feeling of a woman who had just lost her child, a sorrow so profound it had been permanently burned into the wood and brass. I stumbled back from the table, gasping, my heart hammering. I had never felt anything so raw, so potent. It was the most valuable emotional artifact I had ever touched. I couldn't bring myself to move the music box. I left it on the table and tried to compose myself in the other room. My study, usually a place of quiet control, now felt charged, violated. A sudden, intense cold filled the room. The lights flickered. I looked towards the doorway of the showroom, and I saw him. A tall, impossibly thin man in a dark, impeccably tailored suit from a century ago. The collector, he was translucent, a figure of shimmering gray energy. He didn't look at me. His entire being was focused on the music box. He glided silently to the table, his movements graceful and predatory. He didn't touch it. He simply leaned over it, and I watched in horror as the deep blue, sorrowful aura rising from the box seemed to flow towards him, drawn into his spectral form like smoke. He inhaled it, a long, slow, appreciative breath. A faint, ghostly smile touched his lips. He was savoring it. He was tasting the grief. He vanished as silently as he appeared, leaving the room feeling empty and sterile. The music box was cold, its powerful emotional echo completely gone, as if it had been consumed. I was terrified, but also morbidly fascinated. The next day, I went back to my work, my hands shaking. I picked up the next object, a simple pair of opera glasses. The moment I touched them, the impression hit me like a physical blow. I didn't just feel joy. I saw the first act of La Bohème from a box seat in 1912. I felt the thrill of a secret romance in the dark theater. It was a full, sensory, historical record. My gift hadn't just returned. It was amplified, 100 times more powerful. Collector's presence had acted like a supernatural tuning fork, attuning my own senses to a frequency I never knew existed. I could now read every object in the room perfectly. It felt like a miracle. A dangerous, terrifying, and intoxicating miracle. The gift quickly became a curse. My controlled, quiet world was gone, replaced by a deafening, emotional cacophony. I could no longer touch anything without being assaulted by its history. The wooden railing on my staircase screamed with a century of angry arguments. The silver fork at my dinner table tasted of a bitter, loveless marriage. My own bed was a tapestry of my nightmares and anxieties. I started wearing gloves, trying to muffle the noise, but it was no use. The impressions were bleeding into the air itself. My home, my sanctuary, was now a symphony of other people's pain. A constant, overlapping roar of joy, rage, love, and despair. The collector would appear sporadically, a silent, approving spectator, drifting through my home, savoring the chaotic atmosphere I was now forced to endure. I was no longer an appraiser. I was a prisoner in a museum of screaming ghosts. I had to know who he was. I sealed off the showroom and spent weeks digging through the provenance of the industrialist's estate. I finally found him, not in a census record, but in a series of forgotten private journals. His name was Alistair Blackwood, a reclusive aesthete from the Gilded Age. He was not an industrialist, he was an inheritor. His obsession was not with objects, but with the emotions they contained. He believed human feeling was the only true art. The journal entries were chilling. He described acquiring objects from grieving families, from scenes of crimes, from lovers' quarrels. He wrote of savoring a particularly exquisite vintage of despair and collecting the raw, untamed palate of a fresh betrayal. He wasn't just a collector of antiques. He was a connoisseur of human experience. And he believed that upon his death, his own refined spirit would be able to continue its work, unburdened by a physical form. He had become a psychic vampire. My amplified ability began to fade as the residual emotions in the collection were consumed. The house grew quiet again. I thought it was over. Then, a new object appeared. It was sitting on my doorstep one morning. A single, muddy, worn work boot. There was no box, no note. The moment I picked it up, the vision hit me. Not a faint echo, a full, violent, sensory immersion. The terror of a coal miner in the 1950s, the darkness closing in, the sound of groaning timbers, the taste of coal dust, the final crushing weight of the cave-in. I collapsed, gasping, the ghost of the man's final terrified breath still in my lungs. The collector appeared in my study that evening. He was no longer just a spectator, he was a purveyor. The ambient emotions of his old collection were gone, and now he was hungry for something new, something fresh. The objects kept appearing. A locket, still warm, saturated with the raw, acidic jealousy of a jilted lover. A pocket knife, vibrating with the frantic, terrified energy of a street fight. A child's doll, radiating a grief so pure and fresh. It was almost unbearable. They were all from recent tragedies, sourced from all over the city. I was his curator, his sommelier of suffering. He would bring me these raw, emotionally charged artifacts, and my amplified ability would process them, unlock their stories, and serve up the raw feeling for him to consume. I was a psychic tuning fork, resonating with the pain of the world. For his private, ghostly banquet, I tried to refuse, to lock the objects away, but the psychic pressure would become unbearable. A migraine of pure, focused emotion that would not stop until I touched the object and released its story. Trapped in a horrifying symbiotic relationship, the final object was a simple, elegant woman's watch. The crystal was shattered. The moment my fingers brushed against it, I was no longer in my study. I was her. I felt her final moments. The screech of tires, the bright, blinding flash of headlights, the shocking crystalline explosion of the windshield, the sudden, terrifying silence, and the final fading thought. My husband, I never told him. It was so real, so immediate. The woman had died only an hour ago, just a few blocks away. This wasn't history anymore. This was a fresh wound. And as the vision faded, I saw the collector, his form almost solid, his eyes glowing with a rapturous, ecstatic light. He was feeding on the purest emotion of all, a fresh, unexpected death. And I knew then that he would never stop. He would keep bringing me these tragedies, forever. I had to sever the connection. I had to starve him. I got rid of everything. Every antique, every piece of old furniture, every book, every rug. I sold my beautiful, historic home. I live now in a minimalist, modern apartment. White walls, steel furniture, no history, no texture, no stories. The silence here is real. It is clean, sterile, empty. My gift is gone. Without the old objects to act as a conduit, the collector has no way to reach me. I am safe, but my life, the passion I had for history, the thrill of discovery, it's gone too. I am an appraiser with nothing to appraise. I live in a world without echoes, but sometimes, late at night, I'll see a news report about a tragedy, a fire, a crash, and I feel a faint cold flicker in the back of my mind. And I know that he is still out there, the collector, forever searching for another open mind, another sensitive palate, to help him savor his terrible, beautiful art.